It's now streaming live on Facebook. Woo!
There we go. We're live on Facebook. It worked this time.
Yay! So here we are in our garden attire and all. So what I was going to tell you about was
Yes.
how I was doing getting a lot of gardening work done and planting a lot of trees and having this conversation with my little brother about, because he's doing the same thing, and his response was, his thought about it was like, oh, it's really the perfect time for me to have, a chunk of time off. It's springtime, there's so much to do in the spring, and but then our conversation was really going on about how much of that is attitude or not, right?
Totally.
Because if it was any other season, would we be having the same conversation? And so that kind of launched us into the conversation about how, you know different different lenses can look at the same circumstances in a totally different way, right? Like,
Hmm.
I could have, $1 million in my bank account and be like, yeah, I'm rich, and the next person could have $1 million in their bank account and it could not be enough, right? um so that, that, like, we know that attitude, and how we choose to look at things. But at the same time, I'm like, it's a struggling conversation because, like, in extreme circumstance times, like, can you say that everyone should have a good attitude? Like, how does that even work, right? Like,
Yeah, I think that I was listening to Brene Brown's first episode, which got launched and put together right in the midst of all of this, and I've listened to some others as well, and they're just talking about how there's just no right way, like, and there's just no right time, um, and how there's no right way to feel or be or like, even I feel really I feel really heard when on Monday, so yeah, this last Monday, I was losing it. I was like, holy cow, I was mad and I was sad and I was, afraid and felt anxious, and I just was overwhelmed with all of what was happening so quickly. And then I've listened to great conscious thought, people in our leaders in our communities abroad, at large. And they all say the same thing. They all say, oh, I was just dumbstruck, like, what the heck? And so then it's kind of opened the door for me listening to Brene Brown and talk about vulnerability and just being really real with what's going on. And things like in my home, even things have shifted because normally I have this work schedule, and I think about this a lot. Like, I have this work schedule, and it's so routine, like everything that happens, whether it's how Blake and I wake up in the morning and he walks the dogs and I make breakfast, and it's like routine, same every day.
mhm.
And this morning I said, you know what, I think I'd like to take the dogs and I'll go for a run, and do you mind making breakfast? And I came home and he had made breakfast for me, and it was like, oh my gosh, is this what it feels like to walk in and somebody's actually made a meal for you and you just have to show up? Wow, I want more of this one. Like, so just little subtle things like that are waking me up to aspects of my own vulnerability, aspects of my life that I don't want to keep the way they were.
Mhm.
Um, and and I can't help but to be in the question of what else wants to be revealed, what else wants to be known, and um, what else wants to be created.
Mhm.
And perfect time, like, I look at the weather. So you're talking about, like, oh, perfect weather, and we're out gardening and got our hands in the dirt, and we've got all these plans around our house, and so I keep looking forward to the weather to see how long it's going to last.
Mhm.
And it's like, oh, it's going to be overcast on Monday. Oh, it's going to rain on Tuesday. and I'm curious how I will feel
Right.
when it's not, super amazing outside as far as sunny and warm
Mm-hmm.
and delightful. A mosquito is flying in my house. That it draws you outside versus what we have is when it could have been that heavy, our dark days that we can get sometimes when it rains.
Mm-hmm. So kind of what you're explaining is like, rather than big picture circumstance, out there, like looking at the little smaller, more subtle day-to-day things in our life.
Yeah, like so subtle, things that I just take for granted that we do. And I realize too, for me, I love my work, and it's been very easy to do a lot of my work, because Blake is my husband is very involved in his 12-step program and different 12-step programs. He has a whole pile of them he goes to, and it keeps him busy. But now they're not happening, and so now it's just him and I. And I feel his need to have me around more. And there's really no reason to go into the office and sit there by myself in front of my big computer. I mean, I have stuff I want to go in and do, but so I realize how I've, over the course of time, little by little, taken my relationship and just gone like this with it, put it aside, and focused on something else. And so just this opportunity of him being home and feeling that wanting to be together for no other reason than, he's not flitting off doing his thing, he's at home. And we spent the whole day hanging out together, and it was like, oh yeah, I remember we did more of this before.
Yeah, totally.
So what else wants to be revealed and known and changed?
Yeah. Like what little things are going to show up in reflection of what's going on in our life, just in the difference of routine, like you said. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And so Brene talks about, I can't remember, is it FFT or something like that? But she also calls it TFT. So terrible, what's it? Something terrible. Anyway, it's the whole idea of when something's in big change, and we have no map, and how that's just right away a place of vulnerability for each and every person. As soon as we have no map and it's brand new, it's like there's no grounding, there's no foothold, there's no directions, there's no path that we can use to start directing us forward. And the more we do that, the more we get used to it. So I was thinking about our relationship, mine with you, in reflection of that, and how we've have this agreement to be in these practices, the Science of Mind practice and conscious living practices, and whether it be 15 commitments for conscious leadership, or whether it be Brene Brown's, or whether it be Byron Katie's work, and all of those different modalities of practicing the same thing with a slightly different take. So you and I have agreed to be in relationship and be vulnerable together, and to walk through those difficult things, conversations and ways of being together, and how the more we do it, it's still yucky, but I don't even want to say it gets easier, because it's yucky.
Yeah.
But there's a knowing that on the other side is something else that has never been revealed before.
I think, I know what you're talking about, because easy is not the right word. Because
we're just live on Zoom, so
a lot of like the last time, wasn't that long ago, like a couple of weeks ago, maybe, whenever tops, that we were still working together in the office, that I came into you and said whatever I had said. I said this, like, I'm going to get really vulnerable right now. And like whatever I was sharing with you, brought me to tears. And it wasn't, and that happens constantly. And it's like, but we do it enough that it's not that it like you said, it doesn't get easier, because it still brought me to tears. It was still a hard thing to share. I still felt terrible about whatever it was. I don't even remember. I think how I felt was that I felt safer. It's like it doesn't get easier, it gets safer. The vulnerability aspect flips to being courageous as opposed to being scared.
Yeah, and familiar is the other thing I wanted to, that it feels for me. It's like to be in my vulnerability starts to have a familiar feel. And so I remember I was, talking about death is not something that's difficult for me. I know a lot of people have challenges around that. And it just, my mom has always chatted about it. And so it's just been a conversation. I used to say, well, when you die, Mom, I want you to come and haunt me and make sure you do this so I know it's you, right? So I was talking with somebody else the other day, and it was a prevalent conversation, and I felt, from my perspective, we had to have the conversation. And they looked at me and they just said, no, I don't have conversations on death. And I'm like, well, now you do. And the idea was, not that I didn't want to honor them, but it was like, well, this is something that exists in our life. And if we talk about it more, we can actually get familiar with it and have a relationship within it, instead of this thing that we pretend doesn't exist and turn away from. And so I feel like that with so many things. Death's a big topic, but there's so many little things.
Like honoring all the parts of ourself, as opposed to shoving any of them into a shadow or a closet or.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah, there's doing that. Honoring all the parts of myself has really changed my life. Really changed it.
Yeah, and yet it's interesting. I don't think I could put it on a measuring stick and show someone, well, this is how I was, except I have a really good example. And maybe I told you before, when my kids were young, when they were like 6, 7, 8, and I would go to bed at night and my throat would hurt. And it hurt because I screamed and yelled at my kids so much. And which is just like, it's like a fairy tale when I tell anyone that. And the only reason I know that is I started taking these philosophy courses and applying the tools to my life. And then I, like years later, 4 years later, something like that, I was on a dragon boat team, and I was the drummer, and I was the one who had to shout the commands, and my throat hurt like it did when I used to yell at my kids. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't felt this in years. And I hadn't realized I'd stopped screaming at my kids. But so it's like the growth is hard to recognize when it's happening. But it wasn't until I had that marker to go, oh my gosh, I used to have this every day. And it was at my kids, not at a dragon boat team. Right? So, yeah, so it's interesting, this path, because I think the rewards are really great.
Yeah. Yeah. And that reminds me that, the topic of how I believe every human being is, sourcing security, approval, control, to some, on various levels in all the aspects of their life. That when I think about, just being vulnerable, being able to share my stuff, and how it gets less, like I feel more safe as time goes on, it suddenly allows me, like, I'm still going to source security in my existence around me, but it's not going to be coming out sideways, you know, security in all the places that hold me back or limit me or hinder me. It's going to be, you know, maybe in relevant places, like more so, right? I think about, as you share your story of, you know, how that change in, you know, screaming and then not, is the amount of times that I would have run away, like literally cut my losses and run away from many leadership roles, much of, like, say, our board work, like so many times where I'm in conversations where, you know, all my story of staff comes up that is like, alarm bells are going off, get out of here. And how now presently I can sit in that and I can watch it happen and I can hear what's going on and I can hear what's going on inside of me, and maybe some alarm bells are going, and it's like, no, you're safe. You don't need to run from this. You, like,
Cool.
you know, so
Yeah.
security is more well used, let's say.
Yeah, right. And I think it's a learning curve where as a child, we had to run for safety because it wasn't safe.
Mm-hmm.
And so it feels like that childhood moment so real.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes real awareness to go, okay, I'm an adult now. I'm not a child and I'm actually safe. I can stand in this.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Hmm. And
Mm-hmm.
so here we are standing in this uncertainty, and it's worldwide. We're all in it together.
Yeah. Yep. We
It's
will
kind of,
have.
it's kind of, for lack of a better word, I want to say it's kind of cool on some levels. It's yeah, I feel like I want you to share the Jane Goodall. Is that how you say your name?
Jane Goodall. Yeah.
Goodall.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you want to do that today, but another day it might be a really good story.
Well, I can share it another day. Let's put it this way. I get what you're saying. It's like maybe cool, maybe curious, maybe fascinating how the shifts of what a big collective experience like this begs for shifts to happen within our humanity, within
Mm-hmm.
us as humankind together. Like it can't, you know, I read something about, you know, at some point we'll be celebrating, like going back to our events and having as much toilet paper as we want, and like, and toilet papering somebody's house, and like all the ways in which we would normally celebrate this. And I thought, I don't think we will go backwards. I think we'll go forwards, right? Too
Trust.
big of a
Yeah.
collective event for that, and it begs a shift. And it's moving so many of us. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll share the story next time.
That's great. And I guess the idea that I want, to stay with is what needs to shift in my life
Mm-hmm.
to bring better balance and harmony where I've been living out of that in denial.
Yeah.
What have I been denying? I just been listening to a really great book. I have no idea what it's called. I just started listening to it. And she talks about, where we've been in denial to ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
really.
Yeah.
And
Denial or not recognizing or
mhm,
asleep at the wheel in any way.
right?
Yeah.
And this is the work. It's like, it's constant, it's never ending. And whoo, wee, as my sister would say,
Yeah.
wee.
There we go. This roller coaster.
Yeah. Um, do we want to? I want to let anybody who's watching this know too that we plan on meeting live on Zoom. Hopefully, if the live works. If it doesn't work, we'll be uploading. So 7:30? No, 7. Sorry, 7 on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
That's tomorrow, isn't it?
Yes,
I can't even keep track.
7 o'clock tomorrow.
I can't keep track of the days of the week anymore.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
7 p.m. tomorrow. for a long, deep dive.
Got to have my sweatband on for that one. Are you actually coming up, or are we doing it live on this?
Well, maybe we should discuss that.
Okay. All right. You guys will find out tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Love you. Blessings, my friend. Thanks for everyone watching.
Yes.
Till next time.
Good night.
Good night.